Everybody wants a tire that's fast on-road, grippy off-road, confident in the corners, lightweight, fast to accelerate, long-lasting, puncture-resistant, and affordable. But when it comes to bike tires, just like with dating, you should probably lower your expectations and focus on improving yourself. But I do a little bit of everything on the bike, so I look for tires that are pretty good at everything. I've been riding the 32C Panaracer Gravel King slicks on my Wabi Special, set up as tubeless. I have about 2,000 miles on them, and these have become my go-to just all-rounder tire because I really don't have to think about them, I don't have to worry about them, and they really let me focus on my ride rather than on my gear, which is a good thing. Basically, they don't give me any problems. Panaracer is the king of making the Goldilocks tire, which is just right on about everything. It's not going to really wow you with everything, but it's not going to give you any problems. And the Gravel King slick comes in black sidewall or tan sidewall that I have here. You can get in 700C or 650B. They come in a bunch of different widths. The Gravel King slick can also be set up as tubeless or not. I have mine set up as tubeless, and I have never gotten a flat with them that the sealant couldn't plug up. Every year they come out with some limited edition fun and wacky colors for them, and they even have a harder wearing plus variation, or it'll say plus right here right after Gravel King, that is longer lasting and has a tougher casing, so you'll get less flats. And that's probably the version that I recommend if you are going to run it with tubes. So it does everything you need it to do, and it's not even that super expensive at only 65 bucks with the current pricing, and sometimes you could even find it for cheaper if you shop around. Ironically, despite being called the Gravel King, I feel like these tires are just okay off-road. It does feel a little bit slidey, and I am riding them on 32s, but I feel like if you really want a true gravel tire, the Gravel King SK, which stands for small knob, is a much better option, because once it gets any rough or there's like any amount of sand, the Gravel King slicks don't really give me a lot of confidence because, well, they're slick. Like even in here, I'm seeing some sand, and that is dangerous. And they can do the off-road stuff okay, but I really feel like they shine when you take them on road, weirdly enough, and they feel much more like a road tire than a gravel tire. I'm not a weight weenie, but a lot of people say that the Gravel King slicks are very light. I do say that they wind up very fast. Come on. And it feels really like a race tire, almost. Because I've ridden the Continental GP5000 S's, and these feel only like a little bit slower than those. But unlike the Continentals, the Gravel King slicks feel like they corner really well, even after they've been ridden for 1,000 miles or more. They feel super confident in the corners, even if they don't feel great off-road. You can still manage it with technique and without riding too crazily, and just knowing what the bike is capable of with the tires on. But this flexibility between fast on-road and fast off-road makes them feel like a really complete package, and that it's hard to beat because I don't just do one thing with my bike. I don't feel like I'm being hindered by the Gravel King slicks at all when I'm riding on the road. It feels like they reward me for pushing harder and that they don't keep up. With a lot of other gravel tires, it can feel like they hit a ceiling and that all of your effort just kind of gets eaten by the bike and the tire. Not really the case with the Gravel King slicks, and I've been besting my PRs consistently on these things on pavement, if that's something that matters to you. Even a bit more chattery stuff like this is totally fine. It's just that if you start seeing like sand where you can't see the ground underneath and baby heads like this, oh, that's when I would wish I had a different tire and a bigger tire. I would say if you ride anywhere between 50% to 100% road, the Gravel King slicks are an excellent tire. If you don't really need like super chunky knobs, and like if you're not riding mud, if you're not riding a ton of sand or really deep gravel, I think that you'll be really pleasantly surprised with the Gravel King slicks with just how fast they are. Even on bicyclerollingresistance.com's testings, these are on the upper end of road bike tires, while not having the problem with road bike tires of getting flats and not being able to go tubeless and all that stuff, and also just wearing out. So what's the catch? Well, I wouldn't really say there is a catch, but I guess the biggest catch is that the Gravel King slicks are not going to be the absolute best at anything. They make compromises, but I feel like they make compromises in all the right areas where it's pretty good at just about anything. And for 90 plus, don't you dare fall over. For 90 plus of the riding that I'm doing here, where I don't really get too gnarly on the off-road sections, this is an excellent tire. There are just some sections here on the American River in Sacramento where there's horse trails and it gets really baby heady, it gets really sandy. I would not want these for those, but as long as I just avoid those, then it's perfectly fine. But if you want like the grippiest tire, these aren't going to be it. If you want the fastest tire, these are not going to be it. If you want the most longest lasting tire for bike touring or bike commuting or the most puncture resistant, these are not going to be it. Another thing that might be a catch is that a lot of people have reported that these only last about 1,000 miles or so. That has not been the case for me at all. I have about 2,000 miles on these so far, and I'm riding brakeless fixed gear and they're still going strong. Everybody says not to do this, but I did it anyway, and everybody does it anyway. But I rotated my rear tire and my front tire. So right now this is the rear on the front. This one's going to be more worn out. And you can see right there is the little dimple indicator for the tread wear. Once that dimple is gone, that's when you should replace the tire. I would comfortably say I have about 500 miles left on this tire, maybe even more because now it's on the front. And the tread is now smoothed out, but it hasn't really been a problem for me. It feels still pretty dang confident in the corners. So 2,000 miles on these tires, and this one's the front one. It's practically brand new. I'm getting a lot of miles out of these tires for what it's worth. My bike is about 22 pounds and I weigh about 175 pounds. So I'm getting really good wear out of these tires. I also skid sometimes. Occasional skidder, brakeless. It wears out the rear tire really fast, but you know, for the price, I'm really pleased with how well these are keeping up, especially with the fixed gear consideration. No, the Gravel King slicks aren't really going to be the best at anything, but you and I aren't really the best at anything, and that's a strength in and of itself. It gives me the confidence to just keep riding wherever I want to go. And okay, this is a little scary. One hand off-road where it's getting a little sandy. But it gives me the confidence to ride wherever I want to go while still being plenty fast enough on a bike that does mostly paved riding, like at least 50% paved riding. This is a great tire if you want to stay fun and fast and inspired while riding your bike on pavement. And there is a cost to having the absolute best of something like the Continental Grand Prix 5000 STR is a tire that I was riding before the Gravel King slick. And yes, those are faster tires and I can notice it. And they are a blast to ride. And yes, they set up tubeless a little bit easier. I guess that's another catch with these things, is that the tubeless can be a little finicky. And yes, the Grand Prix 5000s do have better cornering, but all of that comes with an asterisk of when they're new. Because I found that once I had a few hundred miles on the Continental Grand Prix 5000 STRs, gosh, that's a mouthful, that they started feeling too slidey in the corners, even when it was dry. A little bit squirrely. And that's not even to say that those tires aren't even super meant for going off-road. At least they put gravel in the name on these tires. But probably my biggest complaint is that the Grand Prix 5000s didn't last very long at all. And they're like, what, 90 bucks a tire? It was just way too expensive. They lasted me 6 months of daily riding, and that was just a price that I could not justify, especially since that peak performance that all the reviews talk about only lasts for like the first 2 months, and then they start feeling a little less confident, still fast, but less grippy. Then you could also get a tire like the Pirelli P0. These are the tires that my friend Halcyon rides. He's the owner of Faith Gear and can ride pretty much any tire that he so pleases and can reasonably justify it as a business expense, even if he is skidding through tires every 2 months. And he does skid through this tire every 2 months. They don't last super long, but they are very fast and they do a great, very easy and very long skid. The problem is you gotta pay 50 bucks every 2 months if you want something that is that light and that racy and that easy to skid. 25 bucks a month this man is paying just in tires. And then there's also the half-brother of Panaracer tires, which are Rene Herse tires. And they're the half-brother because these tires are not designed by Panaracer, but they are made by Panaracer. It was a company based out of Washington. They do a lot of all-road gravel type of cycling, and they were one of the first adopters of this style of riding. And their goal was to make like the lightest, supplest gravel tire possible. They call them all-road tires because you can ride them on-road or you can ride them on gravel roads. You can ride them off-road, whatever you want to do. That's the idea. And I was actually riding a pair of these before I got my Continental Grand Prix 5000 whatever Type R Extra Pro Maxes. I actually bought these tires used from my friend Jericho, and he bought them based off of my recommendation with my previous mostly good experience. It was more like they were my ex and I was only remembering the good parts. But he sold them to me because he got absolutely fed up with these tires because they were just constantly getting flats, even when just riding around on the road or riding around on the street. He was running them with tubes. And then I got fed up with them and ended up throwing these two $75 tires that still had life in them in the trash because I got a puncture in the sidewall of one of the tires, and I just didn't want to have to deal with the headache because that sidewall, it wasn't sealing up. I didn't want to have to deal with more punctures in the sidewall, and with my previous experience, these tires, while being super fast, have been really fragile and just didn't do the job of being a tire of holding air. Although Panaracer Japan does make the Rene Herse tires, that doesn't mean they have to like them because they have completely different design philosophies where Panaracer is trying to make the most well-rounded tire possible at a good price, where Rene Herse is trying to make the raciest, fastest tire possible, even if it does have to sacrifice some things like durability. It's like, yeah, Panaracer made them, but that doesn't mean that Panaracer has to like them. That's probably how my mom feels about me. When making bike tires, or with anything really, there's always going to be compromise. And I feel like that Panaracer makes the best compromises to making a very well-rounded tire that most people who buy these things are going to enjoy. Which is all to say that, hey, Panaracer, I really like your stuff. Why don't you sponsor me? That'd be sick. And speaking of sponsorships, this video is sponsored by Wabi Cycles. You can get Panaracer Gravel King slicks from them. You can even spec it up on your Wabi bike right out of the box so that you don't have to go tomfooling around trying to upgrade your bike that you just bought. You can make upgrades from everything, from the most important stuff like your handlebars, your stem. You can even change the stem length and angle at no additional cost to really dial in your fit, because everyone says fit is the most important part of the bike. Then why don't bike companies let us fit our bikes when we buy a bike from them? Well, Wabi lets you do that. They even let you change your saddle out. I really like the Brooks Swift. That has been my go-to saddle for the past 7 years now. And yeah, it's very customizable. But if you don't want to think about that, their completes are also just super solid, especially for the price. Reynolds 725 steel tubing, which is more a lightweight steel tubing to make it super springy. Anyway, yeah, go check out Wabi Cycles and maybe some Panaracer Gravel Kings, linked in the description.